Hi there, my name is Aaron Short. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Hope you're well today. It's December the 5th, 2020. And you may know that impulse responses or IRs have been around for many years, and they're basically a way to recreate the sound of a microphone in front of an electric guitar speaker or a reverb effect in a room. And in today's case, they can also be used for acoustic guitars to recreate the sound of a microphone, which for most players is the dream of my guitar, but louder. You'll see that a lot in various forums. I want to hear my guitar, but louder, because I spent so long searching for an acoustic guitar, and I love the sound of that acoustic guitar, and I want to hear that sound on stage as well. Now, I do discuss acoustic guitar pickups on this channel quite a lot, but what you mostly hear from a pickup is the sound of that pickup that's in the guitar, and not the sound of the body and the full depth of the tone that the listener would hear in the room or on your favorite recording of your favorite artist. Even pickups that include a microphone are hearing the inside of the guitar and not the outside where an external microphone or the listener would hear it. Fishman, Guitar, Yamaha, recently LR Bags, and even Ovation I just heard about have been using the technology, but ToneDexter was the first product to allow you to create a custom IR using a studio microphone, and this has a lot of great benefits that we'll discuss today. It's a very interesting topic, and my goal is to help explain the technology on this channel. Please go back and watch the videos with Lloyd Baggs and Larry Fishman, but today I'm very excited to be joined by James May, one of the creators of the ToneDexter preamp pedal, to discuss his product and explain the benefits of impulse responses in more details than I can do myself. Please feel free to ask any questions in the chat as we go, and if you're new here, please subscribe and ring the bell. So without further ado, hi James, how you doing?
Hey Aaron, I'm doing well, thank you.
Oh,
Thanks for having me on.
Can we get to know you first? Like, where are you from? What kind of music do you play? And what's your background with creating musical products like the ToneDexter?
Yeah, good questions, I guess. So I'm from originally Cleveland, Ohio, northeastern Ohio. And my background is both musical and professional in the sense that I'm an electrical engineer. I did a lot of work professionally in the telecom industry. Now, for those who don't know what that means, it means communications over the telephone line. And back in the 80s and 90s, I was doing a lot of work with analog signals, getting dial-up modems to work over telephone lines. And then in this century, that all changed to DSL. So I did a lot of work in that industry. I was a specialist in analog design, telecommunications related issues. It's a little bit interesting relating to audio because it's really kind of like audio, only it's faster, it's higher speed, but a lot of the problems are the same. So that background of mine came in very handy when it came to designing audio products, which I have also done non-professionally for a long time until I started Audio Sprockets and had a couple of partners, Andy Norell and Michael Seidman, join me in that endeavor. Andy was a friend of mine and also a telecom expert. He is a digital signal processing expert. He worked his entire career in telecommunications as well. And a little bit of the background, we decided to start the company after I was playing a lot of music at that point and not happy with the sound I could get on my acoustic guitar. And not only that, my favorite stars and artists that I would see on live in concert or on television or on the radio doing live things, I loved the music, but I hated the sound of those pickups. So I really wanted to do something about that. And after a little convincing, Andy agreed to join me, and then he brought in a friend of his, also from the telecom world, Michael Seidman, and the three of us put ToneDexter together. And this was, around 2015 when we started.
2015. Wasn't it released in 2016? Am I correct?
Well, yeah. So we had a prototype version. Our original version was different than the one that we actually brought to market. And it did everything the current version does, but it had a few more bells and whistles. And little learning curve there. We realized that we couldn't sell it for as much as it would cost, which was about $800 at that point. So we had to go back to the drawing board and redesign it for something the market could afford. And that was a fun challenge. So we had a little bit of a false start, but we learned a whole bunch, and we learned what we needed and what we didn't need. So, it was good in the end. It helped us get to where we are now.
So I'm actually showing a picture of the ToneDexter Pro to the viewers right now. This is the original ToneDexter. And so what's different about this one to the one that we have on the market now?
So that prototype, of which there were about a dozen, and we had those in beta testing with people like Peter Frampton and some other pretty well-known folks who really liked it. What's different is it had a mid-band EQ, and it also had the ability for a microphone to be mixed in with the wave map processing your instrument live during playback. So it had an additional function. It could serve as a little 2-channel mixer for the singer-songwriter application. But we had to take some things out in order to make it affordable. And after we studied that, we realized that no one was going to miss those things. So that's really the difference. The processing was basically the same, and it did the same thing.
Awesome. That's now a collector's item, right? The ToneDexter Pro.
I suppose so. Yeah. I see it on your screen.
Yeah. Let me go over to the current iteration, which is the ToneDexter here. This is my own ToneDexter right here. Now, before we talk about this, I want to backpedal some more. I'm a big fan of acoustic guitar pickups. So what was your playing situation before you invented this product? What pickups were you using? What venues were you playing at? What was your experience as a performing musician before this product?
Yeah, good question. So I, like everybody else, tried a lot of them. The undersaddle pickups really never did it for me. Now, back in those days, these blended systems weren't common like they are now. So I can't say that I ever tried a blended system in the day. But after trying the undersaddle, I soon realized that maybe a soundboard transducer would give me more of the sound I was looking for. So I got over to the K&K camp, and I put K&Ks in most of my guitars at that point. And it was definitely better. Soundboard transducers will, as I know now a lot more since I actually have my own pickup too, which I can talk about. But in general, soundboard transducers will give you quite a bit more of the character of the guitar. Not all of it, but much more than an undersaddle. So I had K&K pickups, and still not totally happy, because it didn't really sound like my guitar. It sounded better, but not the same. Now that actual experience that I had with K&Ks and all the other pickups that I tried, after I did ToneDexter, is when I developed the ultratonic pickup, and maybe we can touch on that a little bit more later. But pickups are something that I do know pretty well.
We will talk about that, but in regards to acoustic IRs, I remember when I was in London years ago, I purchased one of the first Fishman Aura pedals, and I always felt that thing was way ahead of its time, and I felt that it was released at a time when we didn't have this. We didn't have the internet in this sort of capacity where it could be fully explained to people what it is and the best way to get the results. So I just gave up on it very quickly because I didn't understand it. And the way I understand the Aura now is that they create their IRs using the Fishman matrix type of pickup. So it's important that your guitar has that pickup. So your soundboard transducer pickups wouldn't probably work as well. And also the images they make themselves at their studio are for certain guitars. So you have to own, say, an OM28 from Martin with that pickup and then find the best match. I think a lot of people didn't know that, and there was a lot of talk at that time of that sounding fake and phasey and digital. So did you ever try the Aura, and what are your thoughts on what I just said?
Yeah, of course I did. And actually, I'm going to backpedal a little bit further than that. So in 2001, there was a paper in the Audio Engineering Society. It was written by the guys from B Band, if I'm not mistaken. And the paper talked about how you could learn the characteristics of an acoustic instrument as seen through the pickup with an external microphone and create an impulse response to represent the difference. So I saw that paper in 2001, and that kind of got the wheels spinning a little bit. And then Fishman Aura came out maybe around 2005 or 6. I can't recall now exactly. Larry Fishman, if you're listening, I'm sure you could chime in and let us know. But I did buy one. I had one of the original boat anchor versions. And, I could see what it was doing. And having had read the paper, the wheels were still spinning. And I realized actually fairly soon that the fact that it wasn't made for your instrument with your pickup was something that limited how far you could go with it. I went so far as to send in files to Fishman and have them create custom images based on the files I sent. And then, I tried those out and yeah, much better. But still, I wasn't happy with how far I could take it that way. And that actually was the impetus for development of ToneDexter. I wanted to do something where, I said to Andy, I said, why can't we do this? Why can't we create a box that has enough processing power to allow the user to actually get a custom, totally perfectly glove fitting impulse response for their instrument, no matter what it was. Guitars, yes, but what about upright bass and violin and mandolin, all those other things? Accordion.
Really? Oh, you're kidding, right?
I'm just checking to see if you're listening.
It's like, what? Is that the new firmware? What I'm going to do...
No, it works with accordion. It actually absolutely works with accordion.
How?
It works with everything. If you've got a piezo pickup and you're picking up something that represents how the instrument sounds, that's correlated to what the mic hears, you can create a wave map for it.
That's awesome.
I've done it on pianos. I've done it on, believe it or not, snare drums. I've done it on everything. And for the most part, it works.
What I'd like to do right now is actually play some examples of what we're talking about. So if you're watching at home, please do put in some headphones if you have them, because when you listen to stuff on your iPhone or your iPad, you can get an idea, but it's never the same as using headphones. I love using these in-ear headphones now for everything that I do. I really hear everything so clear. So what I'm going to do, if you don't mind, James, is I'm going to play a recording of my Fishman Gold Plus direct to the computer. So this is what an undersaddle pickup sounds like. We'll discuss that, and then I'll play a recording of a microphone, and then I'll play the ToneDexter map that I curated this week with your new firmware 2.0, which is sounding very good, I have to say. And then we'll go over to ToneDexter, and you can explain to people how it's doing it and what they would do, how they would make their own. Okay?
Sure.
So you might not be able to hear this, but I have sent you the files ahead of time, James, so you know what it's going to sound like.
That's okay.
Okay, awesome. So this first recording you're going to hear in the chat, and let me know in the chat what you think as well. This first recording, again, is a Fishman Gold Plus undersaddle pickup, and it sounds like this. Now, I'm not just saying this because Larry Fishman may be watching. I think for an undersaddle pickup, that sounds really good. And I think it has some qualities which are, it's very articulate, it's very, I'm trying to think of good words to use today. It's very punchy, some people might say clear. But what you also hear in there is this kind of plasticky, artifact type sound. Some people refer to it as quack, as I know audio sprockets do. I know that Larry Fishman doesn't like the phrase quack, so I wasn't going to use it. But you know what we mean. It's not completely natural sounding. So what do you think about that? You've heard the recording, right, James? What are your thoughts on the sound of the undersaddle pickup? How would you explain it to people, that sound?
I didn't have to hear the audio. That sound is etched in my brain. And we've all heard it gazillions of times. And I have to say, you cannot blame the pickups for that sound. Pickups, they do their best, and what they're actually getting is not a lot of information to work with. They are, in the case of this kind of a pickup, undersaddles are basically just hearing the string and a little bit of the body of the guitar, but mostly not. Maybe 10% body of the guitar and 90% direct string sound. So that brittle, quacky quality is not the fault of the pickup. It is the sound of the strings. That's what strings sounds like. Some people, I'll just say, some people have a kind of a mistaken idea that it's because there's not enough headroom in their preamp, that's what gives you that quacky sound. No, that's not what it is. That's the sound of the strings. Now, makers, rightly so, they try to equalize that a little bit to, take away a little bit of some of the harshness on the top end. And that helps a little bit, but still you can only go so far, with an undersaddle pickup. So, it's what it is.
Yeah.
They are good transducers in the sense of they're very linear. They aren't non-linear like some people think. That's another internet myth. Some people think that they're non-linear, and the harder you play them, they change quality. They get more brittle or something like that. That's not true either. They are very good linear transducers, as are soundboard transducers, piezo elements. Basically, piezos are very, very good transducers, and where you put them makes all the difference in the world as to what you get out of them, as far as what they're able to sense that's moving on the guitar. So I don't have anything against them. In fact, if that was mainly our main reason for doing ToneDexter, is because the majority of people use that style of pickup. Undersaddles dominate, and we wanted to make something that would fix it, which is what ToneDexter will do. It also fixes other kinds of pickups, whatever deficiencies they have. It will deal with those as well.
I have a few things I want to include. I was at the Martin factory years ago when I first got into Martin guitars, and one of the guys there said to me about pickups, really great line: you don't hear the guitar, you hear the pickup, right? I thought that was great.
Yeah, I mean, it's another way of saying, I think, what I just tried to say, which is you're hearing the string and very little of the guitar. It makes your $5,000 Martin sound like a $500 other kind of guitar.
Yeah.
Because in that sense, you basically can't tell the difference when it's going through that style of a pickup.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
What's amazing,
unless you have a ToneDexter.
Right. Well, we'll get onto that. Don't worry.
Yeah.
What's amazing though, I just keep thinking of all these things over the years. Like when we went to Summer NAMM, you walk down Broadway where all the bars are playing the live music, and all you hear is that sound. You never know what kind of guitar they're playing. You just hear that sound all the time. It's absolutely amazing. One problem we have, I call it a problem, this is a whole discussion right here. One thing we have with this stuff is people are used to hearing the sound of a naked undersaddle pickup. That's the sound they're used to hearing from an acoustic guitar. So it can be a real shock to hear a mic. Some people haven't even recorded their guitar into a microphone in their lifetime. So that's something else that people need to kind of do and experiment with as well. Let's hear the microphone now. Let's hear the guitar through an actual microphone, no processing, okay?
Mm.
Wow, completely different. Now, I intentionally left on the beginning part where I picked up the guitar to show you one of the downfalls of a microphone. It picks up all the noise in the room. So if you have, I actually have bad technique on some of my recordings for the channel where I'll hit the pick against the guitar and you'll hear this on the guitar. It drives me crazy. Today the planes are flying. If a plane flies overhead, you'll record the sound of the plane. These microphones that we use are condenser microphones. They pick up all the sound. This is the one I've been using, the Slate ML2, which was actually recommended by James. It's a great microphone for the price. And that's one of the downfalls. But having said that, it sounded, in my opinion, big, warm, round, natural, and a very pleasing sound. Not as articulate as the undersaddle pickup, to be fair, but just a very nice sound. And let me know if you agree in the chat. I think most people would. And that's the sound of a mic, and that's the sound that a lot of people want to hear on stage. So now what I'm going to do, James, is I'm going to play the recording of the ToneDexter, so everyone can hear what the ToneDexter is actually doing. And then just quickly, I'll just cycle through the three so you can hear the undersaddle pickup, the mic, and then the ToneDexter. And then I'll let you explain what it's doing and how it works, if that's okay.
Sounds good.
Okay, this is the ToneDexter. No processing, again, recorded straight in. I mean, not playing them back to back, you would, if I didn't tell you, you would never know that wasn't a microphone. It's really, really impressive. I'll just, before I hand over to you, James, I'll just play the undersaddle, then the real mic, and then the ToneDexter, just so we can hear them back to back briefly, okay? Here we go. Mm-hmm. I'll do undersaddle, then mic, and then ToneDexter. Awesome. Now let us know what you think in the chat. Thank you to Chad Boston for the super chat. He says, have a cup of coffee. I really appreciate it. I shall use my Sandhole sniffer mug. Cheers, Chad Boston. I appreciate your support. James, I felt like the ToneDexter was slightly less bright than the microphone, but otherwise really hard to tell the differences. So what I'll do is I'll put the ToneDexter on the screen, and we've got some slides as well, and I'll ask you to show us how this works and the best ways to use it, if that's okay.
No, so the question is, what is an impulse response and how does it transform a pickup into sounding like a microphone? I think that's your question, right?
Yes, how does it do it?
And for those, sort of people who are just, they're musicians, but they're not technical, and most musicians aren't technical. Impulse responses are just another way of saying a complicated filter. And I think most musicians have some sense of what a filter is. If you have an EQ with a bass or a treble or maybe a mid or maybe it's a graphic EQ you've been exposed to, then that's kind of a filter where you're altering the frequency response. In other words, how the low frequencies, the mid-tones, the high tones, their relationship to each other. So you can make it sound more trebly, more bassy, whatever. Well, an impulse response is like that, but it's as if you had 16,000 or 32,000 different controls, finely spaced, okay? So on one level, an impulse response is a filter that has thousands and thousands of bands of adjustment possible. So you can think of it that way. And it's done with digital processing. It's something that can't be done in the analog world. So this is one of those examples that, digital can bring you power that you cannot get in the analog world. And so what happens when you create a wave map, or if you're using one of the other, somebody else's product, what they're doing somewhere under the hood or in their factory or whatever, is they are comparing the sound that gets into the microphone to the sound that came from the pickup. And they're comparing it to find out what the relationship between those two is. And they're creating this filter after they discover that relationship. The filter, or the impulse response, represents the relationship from how to get from the pickup to the mic sound. And that's why we call it a wave map, because it's kind of a map that takes you from one to the other. So it's a way to get from the pickup to the mic sound. That's why we called our thing a wave map. And it sounds simple in concept, and there are lots of ways to try to solve that problem, let's just call it. A lot of technical ways to do it. And we spent a lot of time, especially my partner and friend Andy, we spent a lot of time working on the best way to do that. And it's, how can I say, it's more complicated than it sounds, because you have a person either strumming their guitar or playing some notes on their violin, or playing the upright bass, and what they give you, you have to make sense out of it. It's not like you have a test signal. If you have a Kemper or some other IR device that's learning your speaker cabinet, well, it's generating a test signal, and that test signal makes the mathematics really easy to figure out the impulse response. In the case of what we're doing, there is no test signal. The user is the test signal, and they play what they play, and we don't want to restrict what they play. We just want to interpret what they play and figure out what's important in order to help us create that impulse response. And, I'm very proud of what we've done. I think it works really well.
Yeah, that's not easy to do then, is it? How important, this is a question a lot of people ask me, how important is the microphone? How important is the room? How important is what you play when you train this thing up?
In our case, it's not very important at all. That was one of our design goals. We wanted to make it so it wasn't dependent on playing any particular thing. It's really, so, you could strum an open E chord for the whole training session, as you know, because you and I have talked about this, and you just did this. It works fine. It gives you everything you need to know. Basically, you just need to excite your instrument so that it's vibrating and getting, a rich response of sound out of it. Now, if you just play one note, you'd think, well, that's going to be very, very limited. But however, there's a lot of harmonics on one note, and you are exciting your instrument. It's not full, but if you play a bunch of notes, at the same time or separately, you will basically excite the instrument and give, our algorithm enough information to learn what's the difference between the two.
Okay, awesome. So we have some slides here. Would you like to go to those to show on the screen what we're talking about?
Yeah. So before we do, let me just set that up a little bit. So the impulse response represents the filter that is the difference between the pickup and the mic. And that's really your instrument and how it resonates. The better instruments have more complex, interesting resonances. And when I say resonances, I mean frequencies that stand out and frequencies that don't stand out, that dip down. It's a bunch of different things going on simultaneously. It's a complex mechanical apparatus that when you strike the string and send energy into it, it vibrates in a very complex way, which to our ears is good. If it's made by a guitar maker or a violin maker, whatever, who knows what they're doing, then you get a sound that's pleasing. And since we're learning that, that's the reason you can make a pickup signal, which doesn't have much information, sound like a microphone. So to set up these slides, I actually have a couple of what we call frequency response plots. And what that means is you'll look at these and you're going to see peaks and dips. And the peaks and dips represent different frequencies that are either louder or softer. Okay, and this is what we're looking at, is the response of the wave map or the impulse response. IRs from 3 guitars. This is a Gibson Advanced Jumbo, a Martin OMC, and a Voyager D18 style guitar in green. The blue one, the Martin, is a little harder to see. But what you see here is the main resonances of these guitars. And all guitars are similar, or at least flat top acoustic guitars are similar in this respect. There's usually a main resonance down around 100 or 110, 120 maybe. And you can see that at the first line, it says 10 to the second on the bottom. That means 100 hertz. And you can see this is the chamber resonance. This is where the guitar forms a Helmholtz resonator, just like when you blow into a bottle of Coca-Cola and you get the, that sound. Well, that's what happens with your guitar. And it happens at about that frequency, which is your low G, G sharp A. It's in that range. And if you listen carefully to your instrument just by itself acoustically in the room, and play those low notes, you will notice that one or two of those are louder than everything else down there. Well, that's this resonance. And the next one up is more like 180 to 200 hertz. And it's what they call the first mode of the top plate, which is the first way that the top of the guitar wants to vibrate. So it's its most easily vibrating frequency. That's what a resonance is. It's where it's the most amenable to vibrating. And that's what that second thing represents. That's the next place you're going to get feedback if you tame the first one. Sometimes that's the first one to go off. It depends on how loud it is. So if you stick a mic in front of a guitar, okay, you don't have a pickup, you don't have a ToneDexter, you just put a mic in front of your great sounding acoustic guitar, and you try to boost the gain of that mic up and play live, it doesn't work very well, okay? And why is that? Well, because the mic is hearing these resonances, and they're sticking up a lot, 8, 10, 12 dB above sort of the baseline for everything else. And as soon as you get the guitar kind of loud, we're just going to start feeding back at one or both of these frequencies, and you will be in trouble. Now, what people do is they put sound hole plugs in, or they try other things. They try a notch filter, which is, can help. But the main problem with miking a guitar is this, playing live. If you mic the guitar and create an impulse response with ToneDexter or with whoever else's process is out there, if you don't deal with these resonances, you're going to have the same problem that you had if you just have a microphone. You will get the lusher sound, but you will have feedback problems. So what we do in ToneDexter is what we used to do before version 2 is we would knock these guys back. When we create the wave map, we learn all this information, and we know exactly where these are, and we just cut them back automatically, and we would bake those into the wave maps, unless you started on slot 22, in which case it would not do that. Now what we do, starting with version 2.0, is we don't do that. We don't bake it in, but we learn it and we allow you the ability to dial it in after the fact, as much or none of the rejection at these frequencies that you need. Okay. You understand this, right? You want to see if you can paraphrase what I just said?
Good idea. Yeah. So the way I see it, we're looking at an EQ curve of these different guitars. And we've all had this problem. I've even had it recently, knowing what I know, just sitting in this room in front of my speakers with pickups, even undersaddle pickups, especially things like K and K. But I guess magnetic, you don't get this problem, which is a good thing for magnetic pickups. But those peaks we see, yes, that's what you get when you go to open mic and someone plugs in a guitar and you hear that. That's basically what's going on. That peak is too high. So what I'm looking at here is an EQ curve. This is what the ToneDexter is grabbing. This would be the same as the microphone. The ToneDexter is taking this and it's basically shaping the pickup EQ curve, which would not look as nice, as beautiful as this one, and making them closer, and then you're hearing the same thing. So is this basically all EQ? Is this all about EQ, this IR thing?
Yes. Well, as we said a few minutes ago, an IR is an EQ.
Okay.
It's just a sophisticated one.
Right, yeah.
It's sophisticated in that you can kind of have any shape you want. You're not limited by certain just bell-shaped curves, different width, and that kind of thing. With IRs, you can make it whatever you want it to be. So you can make it fit like a glove. This was actually the measured response through the wave map I created for one of my guitars. It's the Voyager, the D18 style mahogany. And what you see is the successive reduction of those peaks as I dial up the notch control, which is now the variable feedback control.
Yeah, so that's the feedback being reduced, basically. Those two big peaks are being turned down when you turn up the feedback control.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's basically a way to think about what the variable feedback control does now with ToneDexter version 2.0 and above, is it learns the exact shape of the problem frequencies, and it allows you to counteract them and dial them down.
Okay, let me ask you
much or little as you need.
Let me ask you a silly question. I might regret asking this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So you're bringing down those two peaks by 10 dB, which looks like it's flattening them out. Everything's flat. So what would happen then if I then turn up my pedal by 10 dB? Will I still get the problems? Will I still get those feedback problems or not?
It depends. You might or you might not. One of the reasons that you get the problem is because the peaks are so much louder than everything else, and you're basically adjusting everything else so that it's loud enough. Okay, so the peaks are going to be too loud and causing the feedback. If you flatten out the bottom, then you probably won't need to bring up the overall level, or you will only need to bring it up just a little bit. So it's a gain. It may not be a total 100% gain, but it's real close to effectively you get, if it's dropping by 10 dB, you're getting 10 dB of help. And 10 dB is a lot. That's a factor of 3 to 1, which is, that may sound like a small number, but the technical people out there will realize that 10 dB is huge, actually.
Yeah. It's
and I just want to say one thing.
Yeah.
If you look at that graph carefully, it's not just one peak that's going down. There's right on the far right side of the picture, you can barely see it, but there's basically a third resonance over there that's just being knocked down just a little bit. And it's not limited to 2 or 3 or 4. It's whatever is peaky below about 440 hertz. The A on your high E string. It's whatever is peaky basically in the whole fundamental range of your instrument all the way down. That's what gets addressed by that control.
So this is great because yes, of course, feedback is a big issue. Even without an IR, feedback can be an issue. Even with an undersaddle pickup, like the Fishman I use there, even that can feedback, can't it? So this is something that's very important. I actually have this with me here. This is the current generation of the Aura, and they dealt with it by having an auto anti-feedback, which again I thought was really cool. It would actually kind of identify what's feeding back at the time and remove it. Some people just do like a big low cut. But the way you're doing it, I think, is very clever. And I love the way you can bring it in or not, because actually, I'm playing a lot now with in-ears. I don't really need that feedback reduction, do I? I can just use the whole map as it is, because I'm not going to feedback wearing in-ear monitors. So I love that I can start without it and bring it in if I need it.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, if you don't need it, then you don't use it. And then you'll get pretty much the mic sound. It's very, very close. And if that's what sounds good, there's no need to change it on account of feedback issues that you're not having. So slide 2 should be the same 3 guitars, but the frequency range is different on the bottom axis. It should be going from something like a kilohertz up to 4 kilohertz or something like that, 500 up to 4 kilohertz, something like that. And what this shows is that all these complex resonances that the body of your guitar has, if you just look at any one of those colors on that picture, you're going to see things that go up and things that go down. And there's a lot of them, okay? And that is what gives your guitar its personality, and that's what makes it sound interesting. It's that very complex bunch of ups and downs, okay? That's sort of the signature of your guitar. And there's 3 guitars laid on top of each other on the slide, and it shows that they don't line up very well. Okay, this was made under the same circumstances, same microphone, same position, 3 different guitars. And this slide just demonstrates that trying to use an impulse response that was made on another guitar, on your guitar, is problematic because those things don't line up. So you're going to be trying to boost frequencies that aren't there, and you're going to be dipping frequencies that are there, and it just doesn't work. This is the reason that sometimes people say IRs can sound artificial or hollow, something like that. Well, it's usually because the impulse response they're using was created on somebody else's guitar. And these things are not lining up. It's like the glove is not fitting. It's not lining up where it's supposed to. And that just doesn't sound good.
That makes sense. So that was the thing with the Fishman Aura, right? If your guitar, if you had an OM guitar and you used the impulse response from a Dreadnought guitar, you'd have this mismatch, and that's when you would hear those weird sounds. Is that right?
That is right. And unfortunately, it's worse than that. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but you can have the same identical model of guitar and those things still won't line up.
So
that's
should be made for
problem.
that particular guitar, ideally.
Yeah, it's, getting those things to line up, two guitars coming off the factory, one after the other, they still won't line up. They'll be closer, but they're still not going to line up. And you will have issues.
Wow.
They won't be as bad as if you're using different models, but if you're listening, you can hear it.
Okay. So even if someone gave me an IR of the same model guitar, it's still better for me to make one of my actual guitar.
Okay. I would maintain that yes, okay. It is. If you really want it to be as good as it could be, and you want that natural sound, and you want to feel like there's nothing between you and the sound that's bothering you, then you need to make your own.
Okay, that's really great info, and that's why sometimes things do work, because they just happen. You get lucky, right? They match up. I remember days of sitting there with this pedal, which again, I have to give this thing props. It was way ahead of its time, and but I remember sitting there just going through each one, trying to find the one that would match up the best, and then thinking to myself, is that the closest that I can get? So making this custom IR means you can use any pickup and it matches with your particular instrument. That's really cool. And we should just mention here, I was talking to a friend of mine last night who plays the cello. This isn't just for acoustic guitar. I know most people here are probably guitarists because that's what my channel is about. But this also has other benefits where this will work with other instruments as well, like we said earlier on. We should just remind people of that. This isn't just for acoustic guitar.
That's right. Yeah, it works with any acoustic instrument that has a pickup, basically. Okay. And we sell a lot to upright bass players and violinists, mandolin, banjo. So yeah, everything.
Banjo, really. Banjo needs an IR.
And cello.
But this leads me on to something that's happening now in the electric guitar world. Electric guitarists are so spoilt with Kempers and IRs and Helixes and all these amazing things. Even my phone has an app now, THU, with these amazing electric guitar models and IRs. Sounds incredible. But this is so great for the acoustic community that we're getting more products like this for our acoustic guitars. But what I've seen lately, and I want your opinion on this, James, there's been a lot about Kemper made an acoustic simulator. The Helix has an acoustic simulator. I see Helix users throwing IRs onto their electric guitars and claiming it sounds like an acoustic. And I know to some people it might sound more acoustic, but this kind of explains why that doesn't really work, doesn't it? Because the magnetic pickups in my Strat are not going to line up with the impulse response from the ToneDexter or any other impulse response that you can buy on the internet. So can you just talk a bit about that? And if I did want to make my electric guitar sound like an acoustic and get the best results possible, actually Tone Wars is here, and my friend Jared has a undersaddle pickup in his Majesty guitar. So what, in your opinion, is the best way to actually make an electric guitar sound like an acoustic guitar, in your opinion?
Yeah. Well, so the problem that we were just talking about a minute ago about the impulse responses not lining up. Okay. Now, if you use an electric guitar with a undersaddle pickup, for example, the electric guitar is pretty much a solid block of wood, although it can be a hollow thin line or something. There won't be a lot of resonances getting into the undersaddle pickup to interfere with the ones that you would create. So you can create a nice wave map or impulse response on a good sounding acoustic instrument and play back through that wave map with an electric guitar that has an undersaddle. And we actually offer some of those on our website for people to download for free. And you can get pretty far with that if you create good wave maps to start with. So the idea of doing it is a good idea. It will only take you so far. And I would say that it basically depends on the quality of the wave map or impulse response that you start with. And I will also say that it has to be tailored for the pickup that you're using a little bit. So if I create one on a pickup that's quite a bit different than the target guitar, you have to take that difference into account and do some post equalization to match the pickup response a little better. But it's all possible. And in fact, on our website, we have some instructions on how you can make your own wave maps on your own acoustic instruments and move those to other instruments that are maybe solid body electric instruments. It's possible to do it.
Yeah, I gotta say.
Now,
sorry.
You mentioned magnetic pickups, Aaron.
Oh yeah.
And that's actually a whole other can of worms. So I'll just briefly touch on why that's more problematic. We talked about piezo transducers being nice linear transducers. Magnetic pickups are not. They're not linear in that sense. They have built-in harmonic distortion, and they also vary depending on where you play on the neck, and if you bend the string, all that affects the response of the pickup. So it's not one response that you can compare a microphone to. It's a whole bunch of different responses that are kind of like a moving target, and when you try to compare the microphone to those whole bunch of moving responses, the mathematics just doesn't get you there. It's a compromise, and it will work a little bit. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it sounds better, but it's not natural. It won't get you to the 95 or 99% believing it's a microphone. It just never will with a magnetic pickup as the source.
Wow. You've got
What's your experience? Have you tried that?
No, I've tried your maps on the silent guitar. I felt some worked better than others. I actually watched that video back today. It's on my channel if anyone wants to see it later on. It's good Saturday night viewing. But some of them sounded great. You know, one problem with those modern kind of Acoustasonic Yamaha silent guitar type guitars is that I feel like I get fooled visually sometimes. If I'm playing a Strat, even if it sounds just like an acoustic, I can't get over the fact that I'm playing and looking at a Strat. So there's some of that in there for me. But no, it sounds great. And you've actually got me wanting to take the impulse response of my Martin OM and put a Fishman pickup in my Strat so I can actually use that sound. Of course, the strings will be thinner. The strings will be different. They're not acoustic strings, of course. It's not going to sound exactly the same, but that piezo pickup should help me get pretty close, and probably closer than any of these acoustic simulators will get you, right?
Yes. Absolutely, I can vouch for that firsthand. And the fact that the strings are thinner, that's probably not as big of a deal as the fact that you've got a lot more sustain on those strings. And it's a different kind of sustain than you get on an acoustic instrument. So that colors the sound and the perception. You know, it's harder to fool yourself when it feels different, but also, you know, you play like an electric guitar string and it just rings on a long, long time. You know, that's not what acoustic guitars do. So that will change the perception too. But, you know, if you're playing in a band and you're doing a lot of electric work, but you've just got a few acoustic numbers, it can work. I've done it myself. And you'll fool people if they weren't looking at you in the audience, and if their heads are turned, they'll think they're hearing an acoustic guitar.
I want to do it. I'm going to make a video on this. I still have the silent guitar. I was never blown away by it on stage. It's a great tool for practicing, and I usually just practice with it. I don't even plug it in. It does sound decent. I've heard other people make it sound really good, but for me, it's never quite there. So I'd love to take the map that I just made, that I played earlier, and apply that to the silent guitar to try to recreate that sound from the silent guitar. And if I do that, I'll make the video and post it on the channel. So make sure you are subscribed to see those results in the future. It'd be awesome.
Yeah.
We've talked about microphones and pickups today. What is good live sound? So I think that's a great question. And what's your opinion, James, on what is good live sound? Do you think that the recreating the microphone live is the kind of goal for everyone? Do you think pickups still have their place? I do notice here there's the character control, which I'm showing on the screen. I can blend the pickup in. Do you ever use that yourself? What are your thoughts on that? What is good live tone? I
think it varies for different people. For me personally, I like my guitar to sound like it does acoustically, naturally to my ear, subject to having those resonances brought under control, the ones we talked about. And then if you do that and just make it louder, that works for me. I want it to sound I want it to sound natural. I fully understand that some people want more of that piercing quality, especially if they're playing in, with other people. Country rock bands seem to be a common example where you've got a lot of loud people on stage and you got a guy up front strumming the guitar. He needs to cut through. An undersaddle pickup is the easiest way for him to do that. It doesn't mean it sounds good. I'm not sure people really think it sounds good. I think they just think it works. And I would say that, with the ToneDexter, you could sculpt that sound to make it more natural sounding and still plenty piercing to get through. So I think it does depend on what your preferences are. What do you think, Aaron? You play a lot.
Well, I'll briefly give my story, which I really should make a video about, because one of the reasons I have a YouTube channel is to share my findings and my results about pickups and guitars. And I wish I'd started it sooner, to be honest with you, because I went through so many pickups. I now review pickups. I've got like 18. I've got another one to do this week, actually. I've got so many, and I tried a bunch before that as well. I will offer this up, though, because I think it's very useful information, or it could be to someone. When I started playing, I used the Fishman undersaddle, and I was absolutely fine with it. I never thought about it. I just played, and I wrote songs, and I did gigs. One day, the bass player turned to me in my duo and said, "That pickup sounds terrible." And that really stuck in my mind. And around that time, I met some people. I got into Tommy Emmanuel, and I met some people that were playing Maton guitars. The Mini Maton I gigged for years. That one didn't even have a mic in it. It was just the AP5, which is a great system that they made there. Very, less quack. So you get that kind of punch and fullness, less quack, and it sounds really good, long battery life. So I gigged with that for many years, and I was very happy with it. When I moved to America is when I realized that Martin was close by, and that's when I got into Martin guitars. And what I really wanted was the Martin guitar, but with the AP5 in it. But I also didn't want anything in the guitar at that point. So I was basically looking for what we call on the acoustic guitar forum the unicorn pickup, or the something that doesn't exist, right? How can you have one without the other? Now, having said that, I still have a fondness and see a use for the systems that are built into the guitars. I mean, those systems that were created by Bradley Clark and Cole Clark and Maton are amazing. If you want to just take a guitar with nothing else and go to a venue, you can get some really great sounds. In fact, you can get some sounds from those systems, again, in my opinion, that are very unique. Like you can dial in the 3 pickups to give certain tones for certain styles, or maybe you want like body sound on that one and not on that one. They definitely have their place, and I still see people say to me, I don't want to carry a pedal, and Bimo actually said he has the F1 system in a Martin guitar that he loves. That's great. He's got IRs basically built on board that were made, again, for that guitar, and he's very happy with it. So I do think those systems have a place, and I do wonder if this technology will be shrunken down in the years to come to be inside a guitar. Even then, some people might still prefer the pedal format. There's definitely, with pickups, there's definitely something for everyone, James. But I gotta say, as terrible as 2020 has been for everyone, what I've actually learned a lot about my music and my sound through it. And again, I think this is useful information. Because I do live streams, I have to wear in-ears. I was always against in-ears, but now I love them, because when you play at low volume in your room, what happens is this, and I was going to make a whole video about this, but I'll just offer it now, and we discussed this the other day. When you play a dreadnought in your room, you hear a lot of volume from that guitar. You hear a lot of low end, and everything is loud, right? What you do is you plug it in, because I like to plug in and loop, so I still plug in. So I plug in the guitar, and it's just feeding back and sounds too boomy, so I cut all the lows. Well, if you then record that, it sounds really thin and tinny and bright, because what you're doing is you're removing the low end that you're hearing from the guitar in the room. But of course, you on the live stream or in the venue will not hear that from the guitar. You'll only hear from the speakers. So that's not good. So with the in-ears, you cut out the room equation, you cut out the feedback, and you just hear, whether it's electric guitar or acoustic guitar or singing or anything, you hear the full sound in your head with no feedback and the sound that they'll hear on the other end. And I do feel that I'm not sure about my performances, but I do feel that my videos have improved because of it, because the sound that I'm putting out to the internet is better represented better. And I'm now a big fan of in-ears. I'm still not sure if I'll use them on stage, but I love them for my live streams. And I've been going live every Sunday at 4 p.m. And for me, I think a lot of people are saying that in 2020, the sales are probably down of PAs and things like that. I think impulse responses are very useful for musicians that are live streaming. And I think if you're not live streaming as a musician, that you should try it out. I think it's really great. You get to play to the world, and then you are plugging your guitar in. I have to say, I've been going live with Maury Rutch, who's a Martin guitar dealer, on Mondays, and every Monday he's playing these amazing Martin guitars to two microphones. The other thing is, I want to say today that that's helped me learn what a mic guitar sounds like, because back in the day when I was trying the different pickups, I never recorded. So it was kind of like I didn't know what sound I was actually chasing. It was a sound that was in my head, in my brain. Mm-hmm. So do grab yourself a mic. This ML2 you told me about is very affordable, and I think it sounds as good in some respects as the Neumann I have. Do yourself a favor. You can record into an iPad now. Record your acoustic guitar. Learn what your acoustic guitar sounds like recorded. And I think you'll then agree with me that when you plug in the pickup, unless it's one of the super systems like I mentioned, I think you're going to find it is lacking. And I did a stream with Maury where he was playing into the mics and I was playing in plugged in direct. And someone on the stream said, "Maury, your guitar sounds great." And I knew why. He's playing into microphones. So now what I can do, what I did last Sunday and what some of the viewers said it sounded really great last Sunday. I will use the ToneDexter direct so I can have that mic sound that Maury has, but I can still use my loopers and my effects and things like that. So I think for live streaming, which is huge right now, things like the ToneDexter have a real purpose. And I think that you should, I don't want to say you should promote that, but I think people should be aware of that. Acoustic musicians should be aware of that use for live streaming. Unless you're just going to play fully acoustic and use a mic, which is great if you can do it. But if you want to use pedals or you've got excessive room noise or something, the IRs are great in 2020 for that. And I've called 2020 the year of the acoustic IR because now it's become so prevalent in the acoustic guitar world. Did you know, James, that I just read that Ovation now have IRs in their latest models?
Yes, I did hear that as well.
Yeah.
Curious to see what they've done. What you just said a minute ago, we try to make ToneDexter as versatile as we can for as many different scenarios, use cases as we can. And I like the idea of using it in a live stream because it frees you up for having to stand still. You don't have the mic for the background noise and all that stuff. And with the notch control now as variable feedback, you can keep as much of that low end resonance as you want based on the sound you're looking to project. So it's good. And it works for live, it works for in your studio, works for in your live stream.
Yeah.
Yep.
I haven't yet tried this. The reason I said that about live streaming is I must have played three gigs since March outside. So I need to use the new firmware 2.0, which if you've got now 2.01, right? If you have a ToneDexter, do upgrade. I was really, really impressed with this new algorithm and the way the notch now works. I really am loving it. I will tune in on a Sunday. You'll hear me using it. I cycle the guitars that I use, but last Sunday's performance was the new 2.0, and this Sunday's performance will probably be 2.0 as well. So tune in and check that out. I love what you've done here, because when you first released a product, which again I think was it really 4 years ago you released this?
We released this version of ToneDexter, which is the only version that we've sold, in 2017.
Oh, 17.
In May.
Okay, so 3 years ago.
So it's been 3.5 years.
Okay, awesome. So I like what you've done, because like we said earlier, now rather than baking in from the beginning that feedback reduction where I would make a map and feel like it wasn't quite the same, now when I make a map it sounds really close, and then I can bring that in if I want to. I think that's really clever. You've also got on here, I might just ask you for any pro tips as I got it on the screen. If you did get feedback, you've also got a bass control and a character control. So can you quickly just tell me how you might want to use those?
Sure. So the notch is self-explanatory. It just dials in as much of the anti-feedback resonance frequencies. It dials out as much of those as you need. Bass and treble are pretty self-explanatory. If you want the sound a little brighter or a little duller, treble is your friend. Bass control is a high shelf when you're it's a low shelf when you're boosting, and it's actually a variable high pass filter when you're cutting. So it's actually a dual mode control. And because we can do all this in software, you can do stuff you could never dream of doing strictly in the analog world. Character is interesting. I think you know it because you've been using it, but fully clockwise is the full mic sound. When you go 12 o'clock straight up, it's we've taken out some of the ambience and the spaciousness of the impulse response and just given you the same tonality without some of the spacious complexity. Technically, we're taking time out of the filter and just leaving it as a minimum phase filter. That's character 0. Character 1 is kind of halfway between those two. And then if you dial to the left, if you take the character control sort of left counterclockwise of center up, you will see it start to blend with the unprocessed pickup. And for those who, like, if you have an undersaddle and you want to just get more of that cutting, biting sound, just blend in a little bit of it and you'll get more of that, and you can decide how much is good.
Yeah, that's awesome. I got to say, when I use that, I often just leave it on full character anyway, on character 2. But it's good to have those options in there. Okay, awesome. I think we should go to the questions right now, because I did promise that we would address them. So,
I will try.
Here we go. Hold on to your hats. Where's the fire? It says, I use a Taylor 412 with their ES2 system into a TC Electronic Play Acoustic. Oh, that's a good pedal. Using the body res. I push it through a Fishman 22A PA. All sounds good to me, but could a ToneDexter improve it live?
Yes. Simple answer. It'll improve it if you're looking for a more natural sound. If you're happy with the sound you're getting, then don't bother. But if you want it to sound more natural, then yes, ToneDexter will do it.
Okay. Great. Yeah, I guess my opinion would be, I love the Play Acoustic. I'm not a huge fan of body res. I feel like that's an older way of kind of removing quack. I would just use, as you know, James, when I first got a ToneDexter, I tried it into a Play Acoustic, basically. That's how I would do it.
The Play Acoustic, if I'm not mistaken, has the body res function as an option in it, correct?
Option. And
EQ
EQ
I was
as well.
Thinking of that a second ago. If the Play Acoustic does other things that you might want, the body res function, ToneDexter will be a lot more sophisticated and natural sounding than that.
Yeah. That's an older pedal. Again, it does other things really well. It's got your looper, your harmonies, your delays, all those things. So you could use this into that. Yeah, and my opinion would be to that, try it out. Try it out and see what you think. Do make sure you put the latest firmware on there. He says, hi, on the Acoustic Guitar Forum, you posted a spectrum of the low end with different anti-feedback positions. The spectrum had great frequency resolution. How can you achieve that with a 2048 points FIR filter? Does that make sense to you? It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the answer is we couldn't if that's all we were doing is a 2048 point FIR. It's a lot more than that.
Playing devil's advocate here, are musicians getting pedal happy in search of the perfect tone? Most ears, can they hear the difference? This is a question a statement I see all the time on even the Acoustic Guitar Forum, where we're all fans of the acoustic guitar. What do you think about this statement, James? It doesn't matter. The audience doesn't care.
What do I think about it? I think it's an oversimplification. I think that some audiences don't care. Some audiences, they care, but they don't realize it until they hear something better, and then they are all of a sudden happier when they're listening. But maybe more important than that is what you're doing when you're playing. Do you care? and how that influences your confidence and the joy that you're getting when you're playing and you're hearing it come back to you and it sounds good, and you just want to play more. I think that's maybe the more important even.
Yeah. That is my answer on those forum threads. I don't care about the audience. That's a bit over the top. I'm like, I don't care about the audience. This is all for me. All this years of trying and buying and reviewing and YouTube channel, all this search is so when I strum that chord on stage, I feel inspired to play the gig that evening. Not that I wouldn't be, but it makes me more inspired. And again, the in-ears are really helping with that as well. I'm hearing the full sound in my head. It's a great thing. So yeah, the audience may not know. Someone once said to me, the audience knows when a guitar sounds bad. They don't know any other time. Everything above that, they don't know.
Well, let's remember too that the audience is just an abstraction. You're going to have people in the audience who don't care. You're going to have other people who are listening really closely. I mean, I can always tell at my gigs who the musicians are because they're the ones that are watching and listening. They're the ones that are tuned in. Not everyone is in that camp. Some people really don't care. So it's a mix. Don't assume it's all one way.
I have the opposite problem. The musicians don't listen to me, and all the drunk people do listen. Maybe that's not a problem though. Should a good quality guitar and pickup played well stand up for itself?
I'm not sure what stand up for itself means. But I do think that certainly it's true, and it's demonstrably true, that if you have a ToneDexter, you will actually hear the fact that you have a good guitar now, rather than the pickup sort of blunting the differences between your good guitar and your crappy guitar.
Yeah.
So I think it matters, and I think it will stand up for itself in the sense of some people will notice and appreciate it.
Oh, Maury's Music said that the guitar sounded heavenly with 2.0 on Sunday. So thank you, Maury. I appreciate your support and your kind words. And then Kooky said, Maury, maybe you should jump into the IR bandwagon. Now, Maury uses a trance amulet, and it sounds really, really good direct on his recordings. So I guess what you said earlier was if he's happy with that sound, that's fine, of course. But the IR could add even more fullness and richness to the tone, right? Have you ever tried?
Yeah.
Okay, here's a question for you. Are there any pickups aside from magnetic that are not compatible with the ToneDexter?
Not really. No, magnetic is really the only class of pickup that doesn't work well. Even the pickups that are made of dynamic microphone elements that you just kind of contact on, so long as you can make them into the ToneDexter with the proper jack, they will work and they will be improved. Even a sound hole mic that you have inside your guitar, or like a True mic or a Baggs, I forget the one, but there are a few that are based on microphones that, they sound kind of okay by themselves, but ToneDexter will fix the sound and make it sound like you want it to, like the mic does on the outside. So answer is, yeah, it's only the magnetics that cause problems. I wanted to make a comment about the trance. So that's a soundboard transducer. There's a number of those guys out there in that class of pickup, which is something that mounts on the inside of the guitar on the bridge plate or in that vicinity underneath the saddle. If there's some guitars, nylon string guitars usually don't have bridge plates, but you can still use pickups in that position. And those pickups will sound better than an undersaddle in the sense of they'll be more natural sounding and have more of the guitar's character in them, without a ToneDexter, I mean. But they usually have feedback issues. K&K, of course, is the big one that a lot of people know. And, K&K has an interesting sound. It has the woody quality. It has some of the guitar's personality into it. Unfortunately, that has too much of those resonances that we were pointing to earlier. And that's the reason a lot of people can't use them live. You know, I have a company
I was about to
called,
say, if only
yeah,
someone could address that issue.
yeah. Well, of course, I address the issue with the ultratonic pickup, which is very much like a K&K or another. There's other soundboard transducers that use piezo elements, but mine has a unique attribute in that it also has another sensor located further away from the strings that is out of phase, and it allows passively the resonances to be canceled so that you don't have the major feedback in low end, muddy, boomy quality. And if you aren't going to use a ToneDexter and you want it to sound as good as you possibly can, then I would say that's probably something you should look at, and I'd be happy to talk to you about it. But with the ToneDexter, can't be beat.
Awesome.
In my humble opinion.
Trying to get this as like an OEM product, or have you, like, if a guitar company is watching that's interested in using this technology in their guitars, is that something you'd be open to?
Yes, absolutely. And we've had some conversations. We are open to helping get a good internal impulse response process going in Martin's or whoever, certainly.
And the issue I had with that in the past is battery life, because these things do use a lot of power to process the IR, right?
Yes. Yes, although it can be minimized, but it's going to be not the same as just a simple preamp, which can last for hundreds of hours. You know, you're never gonna get it that good with impulse response processing.
Okay, Thomas Moore, do I need an FR or full range speaker, like a PA speaker, for an IR to work?
That's a really good question. And technically, no, you don't. But if you don't have a full range amplifier, you may not hear all of the benefits. So for example, if you plug your acoustic guitar into, let's say, a Fender Deluxe Reverb or some other guitar amplifier, those electric amps are voiced really differently. They have a lot of personality in their frequency response, which is a polite way of saying that they're not very flat. They're purposefully, altered. The frequency response is altered to make electric guitar pickups sound good. And that's not what you want for an acoustic instrument in general. So you don't have to, but if you have a full range, either a dedicated guitar amp, acoustic guitar amp, or just a regular old PA system that's full range, then that's all you need, and it'll sound good.
Are there any, what's the right word? Probably the wrong word. Compromises when you're trying to make this thing work with all the different pickups, or not?
No, actually, okay. It's a good question. And you might think that one might go down that road of trying to tailor it for a certain pickup, but in fact, the reality is that if you have a good process, it doesn't care what you feed it. And the better the process, the less it cares. And, our process is pretty good, I would say, because it doesn't care. It's not dependent on any particular kind of pickup other than, as we said, don't use a magnetic. And it doesn't care what kind of mic you use. The flavor of the mic will flavor the outcome. So you have to be aware of that, because that's what you're telling it the goal is. You're saying, okay, I've got this mic in front of this instrument. Now, Magic Box, make it sound like that. And it's not going to question what you tell it. It's just going to do it. And if that isn't a great sound, then you're going to have to move it around or change the mic or whatever. I should have mentioned, too, when we talked about the character control and the blend function, we're blending the impulse response with the pickup, but we're time aligning it too, so that there is no phase or time difference between the pickup and the impulse response or wave map. So there's no artifacts when you blend. I don't know that that's true for any of the other products. I don't really know what they're doing, but I know that we are indeed doing that. And experienced sound guys, like, that pros who do sound for major artists, sometimes they use a mic and a pickup. They just have an undersaddle going into a DI box, and they've also miking the instrument. They're getting both signals at the board. Well, they're going to delay that pickup so that it matches the time alignment of the microphone to avoid phase problems. We do that for you in ToneDexter.
Thomas Moore, here's a good question. Can an IR make a cheap guitar sound better? So can we use the process we mentioned earlier with the Yamaha silent guitar in order to make my $200 guitar sound like a $2,000 guitar?
Yeah, actually you can, and there with some constraints on how you do it. So if you use a solid body like the Yamaha silent guitar, whether you call that a cheap guitar or not, that's up to you to decide. But let's call it a simple guitar. That and an undersaddle pickup. That undersaddle pickup won't have much personality in it because that guitar doesn't have any personality. So if you do it properly, you can create a wave map on a really nice guitar and transport it to the Yamaha silent guitar and make it sound rich and expensive. So yes, you can. What you can't do as easily is if you have, like say, a $200 guitar that doesn't sound very well with an undersaddle pickup, and then you make a wave map on a nice guitar, it won't all translate to the cheaper guitar because there will be some personality in that pickup signal that will be interfering with the wave map. It will help, but it won't get you there. So I guess the short answer is yeah, a little, but you have to temper your expectations about that. It's easy enough to try.
Right. It's easier with the silent guitar because it has no personality, so you can give it one. But with a regular acoustic guitar, it's already got some personality there, which may cause those conflicts. Exactly.
Well said, Aaron. Exactly right.
I am listening.
Yep. Yeah, I noticed.
I just had a thought. Martin, if I wanted to get really modern, could make a version of the silent guitar and put these maps in there of OM28, HD28, right? Jumbo, that they could make a Martin that when you plug it in has those sounds of a mic'd Martin with all the different guitars they make in one box. They could do that if they wanted to.
Yeah. Yes, they can.
And are they doing that with you? No, I'm just...
Well, they have my number, so they know how to get a hold of us if they want help.
Oh, dear. These are the kind of things I want. I'm a big fan of the Fender Acoustasonic. Simply, I mean, I love the guitar, but I just love when people give the acoustic guitar world some love. I mean, the Variax Acoustic was a great invention. You could even change the tunings of the guitar, and it got discontinued. I mean, again, way ahead of its time. I get very frustrated when these great ideas get phased out, before they've even got a chance to become anything. And I'd love to see someone like Martin do something like that, and also add the option to tune each individual string as well for dadgad and stuff like that. Imagine that. It could be phenomenal, right? Really great tool.
Yeah, I mean, in the general sense, there's a lot that's possible that hasn't been done yet.
Kooky says, Thomas Moore, plugged in, yes. Think about the Fender Acoustasonic Telecaster and Stratocaster. They have no acoustic tone and sound acoustic, realistic plugged in. Yep. And
yeah, and Aaron, you and I both tried that Acoustasonic for the first time at NAMM a couple years ago, I guess it was.
I was with you, yeah.
And yeah, it was pretty impressive.
I love the idea of, as a performer, I love the idea of these tools. Like, I love the idea of a guitar that can sound like a Dread, a Parlor, a clean Strat, a heavy Strat. And I love the idea of the Variax where you can just press a button, or even have it on your floorboard where you change patches and it changes tuning. I think that's really, really useful. I'm guessing that the Variax guitars use, again, the same process, right? But again, like 7 years ago. But a similar process. But they could also do alternate tunings, which is really, really clever. I don't know. I think they were way ahead of their time.
I don't know how they were doing the Variac thing. I thought it was more of a modeling thing than an impulse response thing. I could be wrong on that.
I don't know. But
and on the Acoustasonic, that guitar actually does have an acoustic response. It's not just a piece of plywood. You know, it
Yeah.
sounds, it has a sound.
Yeah.
It's thin, but they made the sound hole, the thickness of that rim, much thicker than just the thickness of the top. That rim is, you know, over an inch thick, I think, and that actually lowers the Helmholtz resonance point, so it sounds more like a full-bodied guitar than it would normally if it just had a regular hole in it.
Okay.
Yeah, they've done a few tricks on that guitar.
They did a live stream the other day and said that there's more to come. So I'm interested to see where they take it. Again, anyone that does products for acoustic musicians, thank you, including yourself, James. Thank you for making products for us, because there's so many Kempers and Line 6 Helixes and all the Quad Cortex. There's so many things now that do all this stuff for electric guitar, and I always think the acoustic guitar gets neglected, you know?
Not so much anymore, though, right?
Is there a big enough market for the acoustic guitar players? I think there is. That's what some companies have told me that. So
Yeah, well, I mean, we think that it still has a lot of growth potential because most people don't use ToneDexters yet, and you know, a lot of them would probably be happy if they knew about it and could get one.
yeah, I think again it's down to education. I really do. I think once people hear what they can do and learn how to use the technology, I'm not trying to sound patronizing at all. I just think, you know, some people don't know what their guitar sounds like through a mic, don't know what results they can get. And that's not just with IRs, like with everything in general, even just basic EQ and effects and things like that.
Yeah, I want to make a point about that. Most people, you know, most musicians, you know, if we want to generalize, you know, a lot of them are not very technical when it comes to electronics and, you know, certainly signal processing, any of that kind of stuff. So it's no fault of anybody's that, you know, there's not a general understanding that you can get a better sound with an impulse response.
Yeah.
That's just the starting point. And hopefully we've educated and, you know, shown people that there's more things possible. And it's changed the landscape, I think.
Oh yeah, sure. And let me add, actually, that's a good thing. You know, like Bob Dylan was not sitting around trying pickups. He was just writing great songs. And I do think that you can go too much other way. Obviously, I have a keen interest in it. That's why I have the YouTube channel. But my goal here is to show people what they can achieve so they can get on making their music and not go down the rabbit holes that I went down over several years, right? So that's really what I meant, just to clarify as well. Have you ever recorded your guitar into a mic and actually listened back to it? Because that's the sound that you're going to get at your gig, not the sound of you. Actually, even just sitting there holding the guitar, you're kind of listening to the guitar from above it, right? That's not the sound you're going to get of the mic in front of the sound hole, you know, at the 12th fret there. So do these things. Again, the reason I started the channel was to make these recordings and be able to use them on YouTube, but I sit and listen to them as well, to really listen to what the gear sounds like recorded. I think it's really important to start recording if you don't do that. Have you got any thoughts on that, James?
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good point, Aaron. You said it earlier, and I think we should underscore it now, is that a lot of people don't know what a guitar sounds like from out front and with a microphone. You know, I was a recording engineer. I have my own studio. I was familiar with that, but a lot of people aren't. And it is good, you know, it's good experience to get familiar with that because, as you point out, sitting behind the instrument is really different.
Get the right system for you, the right sound reinforcement, and do invest in a looper or get a pedal like the Play Acoustic that has a looper. Record your guitar and then walk out the front. That is a great way to do it. I've reviewed the JBL Eon Compact, and that thing is so ahead of its time because it has the app built in with the full EQ. So you could technically record a loop of the ToneDexter, walk out the front, and then dial in the sound with that. I think there's some really good tips here. I will make a series on basic EQ for new musicians and tips like that. But that really has revolutionized the way I do things. So there's some little things like that you can learn that really help as well. What kind of pickup do I need for ToneDexter? Will a K&K work, or do I need an undersaddle transducer?
You don't need an undersaddle. A K&K will work.
What kind of pickup do I need? Will a K&K work, or do I need undersaddle transducer? Well, they both work, right? They both work fine.
They'll both work. Yeah.
Thomas Moore says, I have 2 B bands in 2 guitars and a K&K. So that would be fine, right? The B band pickup?
Yes, with a caveat. Make sure it hasn't become unglued. They had a problem with those, and they worked fine at the beginning, and then some years later they would be unusable because they detached. So assuming it's still working properly, then yes, it will work.
Thomas Moore just got the Pod Go. I will address something that people might be wondering. If they buy a Pod Go which can load IRs, can they load a map directly from the ToneDexter into the Pod Go?
No, not directly.
Okay.
So they would have to either use some software to learn the impulse response that is that wave map. If you have a Kemper, you can do it. A Kemper can profile a ToneDexter's wave map.
That's good. Yeah, I never tried that.
Automatically.
The new neural quad cortex has been delayed, but everyone's raving about, even though it's not been released yet, the world we live in. It does capture. It does capture too, so maybe that will work. Is there any software? I know someone's going to ask this in the comments. I'll ask it now. Is there any commercial software that would do this easily for people if they wanted to do this? And I mean, are you? What's your position on this? Do you support this or not?
Well, we're neutral on it. I mean, there are some software things for your DAW that will allow you to do it. I think Doug Young has published some things on the AGF. It's not hard to do if you're a little bit technical, and we're fine with it.
Okay, awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, because I have the Helix, and a lot of the users talk about IRs. They go and buy the 3 Sigma IRs, which are great, but again, like we've spent the last 2 hours discussing, it's not the same as making the IR of your acoustic. So definitely look into that.
Right.
All right, awesome. So thank you for your time. We've done over 2 hours. I guess I suspect that this may happen. I wanted someone on here to help me explain IRs, and I think we've done a pretty good job, James. What do you think?
I hope so. I mean, I tried my best. It's not simple, but it's not that complicated either. And I hope it was helpful to people.
If people,
I hope we didn't turn everyone off by going so long.
No, I think it's good that we put everything into one video. If you've got friends that play acoustic guitar, please share this with them as well, because I think there's some great info here, in my humble opinion. And James, if people have any more questions for ToneDexter or your pickup, or just want to follow you, how can they do that?
Well, they could contact us through the website, audiosprockets.com. It's james@audiosprockets.com. And I'll get back to you.
Now, this has been so great, James. I'm really loving 2.0. Anyone with a ToneDexter, do install it. If you haven't tried one, do try one. And stay tuned to my channel, because I'll be doing lots more videos on all these pedals. And I like to post my videos and get your comments on them as well. So thank you so much for supporting the channel. I really appreciate it. For everyone watching, be well, stay safe, and thank you for your time today. We really, really appreciate it. Make sure you're subscribed, ring the bell, and I'll see you in the next video. So thanks for watching. Bye-bye.